His method, therefore, is going to be thoroughly empiricist. With Locke, he's going to insist that the only resources we have for natural knowledge is the ideas that comprise experience. Simple ideas. And with Locke and with Descartes, he's going to affirm that the empirical faculties which God has given to us are quite trustworthy if we use them aright. If we confine our assertions to that for which we have evidence. So Berkeley, if you like, is an evidentialist. Locke's kind of an evidentialist. Proportion your beliefs to the evidence. The difference between Berkeley and Locke is that Berkeley doesn't think there is evidence, sufficient evidence, for the existence of matter, physical force, absolute space, absolute time. Why not? Well, that's where we make the transition from his project to thinking about the principles on which his case rests. Let me pause, though. Any comments, questions about the project?
Well,
Ryan.
This is something from a little earlier. When you drew the Kantian X, or the X with Kant
yes.
and rationalism, or continental rationalism speaking on one side, British empiricism. And then I thought it was that the rationalism continued on in German idealism.
That's right.
And then the empiricism continued on in nominalism.
Yes.
But what did you just say that idealism is under phenomenalism, or?
Okay, let me clarify. Yeah, what we had done was to diagram this way the development of continental rationalism from Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz until the point where Kant, around 1800, is forced to bring to bear the thinking of David Hume as well, awakened from those rationalist slumbers, as he puts it, by reading David Hume. Bacon, Hobbes, Locke, Berkeley, Hume, you see. Now, I just said that, or you just said rather, that empiricist trend continues in the phenomenalism of the 19th century. Yes. And my reference there is to people like the French philosopher Auguste Comte and John Stuart Mill, you see, and subsequently 20th century logical positivism. Yes, they're all the continuation of that British empiricist tradition. But lo and behold, what we find in 19th century German thought, French as well, is the development of a metaphysical idealism out of the roots of continental rationalism. And you find that a little bit confusing, understandably, because Berkeley is also an idealist, but he's in the empiricist tradition. So what? You can be an idealist with two different epistemological traditions. You can be a rationalist who's an idealist. You can be an empiricist who's an idealist. No problem there, if you're ingenious enough in what you do with it. But the other thing that confuses you is that there are two kinds of phenomenalism. So what? You can have phenomenalism on an empirical basis and phenomenalism on a rationalist basis. Yeah, you see. Now, to, however, respond to your curiosity, how come the rationalists become idealists? Well, rationalism is talking about the intellectual resources, this kind of rationalism, the intellectual resources innate within the human mind, innate knowledge, a priori knowledge. Now, you move from the age of reason into the 19th century, and the emphasis is upon innate resources, not for knowledge, but for creative self-expression. You see? So what you get here is an idealism that is more of the Romanticist sort than of the Enlightenment sort. You see? An idealism that, that depends upon the recognition of the inner realities, the springs of activity and action and thought which there are within the human spirit. You see? Whereas for Berkeley as an empiricist, no, his idealism doesn't stress the creative resources of the human spirit. It stresses the passivity of the human mind as a recipient of certain kinds of sense stimuli. Very different picture. Does that help? Okay, that's a jump ahead, an anticipation, but don't be confused by the fact that you can sometimes hold similar positions for different reasons. You see? Yeah, there's not always just one line of argument for a position. There might be two utterly incompatible lines of argument, but for the same position. Yeah. Take republicanism as an example. There are all sorts of incompatible arguments for a position like that. It doesn't make the position right or wrong. It's just that if you're starting at one point, you may happen to come out at the same conclusion. David?
I was going to ask, so is phenomenalism the belief that the mind can only know phenomena, or there only exist phenomena, there are no reality?
Berkeley's position as an idealist is that matter does not exist. All that exists is minds and mental states, ideas. Yeah. The phenomenalist may not be as assertive as that. The phenomenalist may say, all we know is phenomena. Yeah. And that's more characteristic of John Stuart Mill. Yeah.
So if he disproves materialism, then you can have a better argument for getting rid of deism and atheism?
Yeah, you see, if it turns out that there is no evidence for the existence of matter, then our ideas of sensation must come from another source. And in brief, what he's going to tell us is that since ideas are mental things, they must have mental causes. The cause must be like the effect. If my mind is not the cause of my ideas of sensation, another mind must be the cause of my ideas of sensation. And since we all have essentially the same ideas of sensation about the same objects viewed from the same viewpoint under the same conditions, there must be some supreme mind giving us all those ideas of sensation. And he has a causal argument for the existence of God. You see, and God has to do this all the time, so it has to be theism rather than deism. Oh yeah, it's clever. Clever. You know, the initial problem, getting a hold on Berkeley that students have in introductory courses, in 101 particularly, is crediting the fact that somebody could deny the existence of matter. You see? Now, I'd like to think that you're beyond that. I'd like to think that you're beyond saying, you mean my hand is an illusion? No, Berkeley never says it's an illusion. You see? I think it was the famous essayist Johnson who said he was going to refute the learned bishop and kicked a rock and went away holding his toe and said, that pain was real. You see? To which Berkeley replied, yes, it's what we call, quote, real, because it was an involuntary kind of pain. Now, at the same time, there are voluntary kinds of pains as you imagine the idea. Yeah, but that was one cause. The only question is, what's the cause of the pain? What's the cause of this involuntary idea of pain that you have? Yeah. And so it's not a silly position. It's a well-measured, serious position. I still don't like it. But as you know, religious thinkers, not only in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but in Eastern traditions, have often adopted metaphysical idealism as what they find to be the best way for talking about the ultimate reality of the divine as a material being. Yeah. In fact, when Spinoza said that everything is God and God is everything, weren't you wishing he would say that it was immaterial? If he's going to be a pantheist, come on, be an idealist. And maybe he disappointed you in being more a materialist. But there are natural affinities between metaphysical idealism and theism, pantheism, religions in those traditions. So there's a long tradition, particularly in British thought, of Christian idealism, particularly of a Platonic sort. Well, you remember I mentioned the Cambridge Platonism of the 17th century. And that sort of thing has kept recurring ever since. Okay, what about Berkeley's principles then on which this kind of argument rests? Well, keep in mind what the problems are which he is addressing. That he's trying to work with Locke's epistemology to other conclusions than Locke's conclusions. And so his first move is to argue against John Locke's theory of abstract ideas. Okay? That's why we're careful to take time to spell out Locke's theory of abstract ideas. It becomes crucial. This, of course, is dealing with the philosophy of language. And so in the opening introductory section of the material that we have from Berkeley, he talks about language. And he talks about abstract ideas.